The peer review process initially starts with a technical screening where we make sure that all of the sections of the article are included. It's then sent to the editor-in-chief, who then sends it out to a certain editor to handle the manuscript. If the editor feels that a manuscript is a good fit for the journal, it'll usually be sent to between 1 and 3 reviewers for them to provide the peer review. It'll then come back and the editor will make a decision based on accept, revision, or reject. It'll then go back to the author, and they'll be given the opportunity to potentially revise the manuscript. So this is a very simplified overview of the peer review process. So if your manuscript gets accepted on the first try, that's excellent. It doesn't happen very often, if at all, but it's something to celebrate. Unfortunately, between 40 and 90% of manuscripts will get rejected. Unfortunately, this happens to everybody. The best scientists and the worst all get rejected. But it's important to understand why the manuscript was potentially rejected. Was it sent to the wrong journal? Does the journal not publish articles in that area? Make sure that if you submit to another journal, that you take the comments that were provided in mind and potentially revise the manuscript accordingly. Usually, if you read the guide for authors of the new journal, this will give you a good idea if this is a good place to send your work. So, revising and responding to reviewers is important. You must prepare a detailed response letter. Make sure you copy and paste each of the reviewer comments and then provide a description of what you did to make the manuscript better, how you use those comments of the peer reviewer to make your manuscript better. Make sure you provide a scientific response for each and write in a manner that can be forwarded to the reviewer without editing. Make sure that you put your work in context with others, and once again, don't oversell your work. So we all know that it takes lots of money and lots of time to do these articles. So make sure that you take the time to be careful with your response to reviewers. So publishing ethics is also very important to understand, especially with the wealth of technical and internet-based opportunities we have for getting so much knowledge. So there's a single international ethics standard for science. Ethics problems are unfortunately on the rise all throughout the world. Many journals, including the journal that I edit, use software that will immediately check to see if a manuscript has been plagiarized. So obviously that's something you never want to do. And unfortunately, if your manuscript does get in trouble, if you will, if you undergo a certain ethics inquisition, the retracted article does not go away. What you can see here in the bottom is on the journal website with a large red retraction sign. So that's something you never want, and that can unfortunately ruin your career. So what leads to getting your manuscript accepted, which is ultimately what we all want? Obviously, your research should be new and exciting. How has this advanced the field further than others have done? Make sure your manuscript is well written. It's good to use editing sources in order to make sure that your manuscript tells a logical and consistent story. Also make sure that your research is easy to understand, as well as reproduce and use. So you want to make sure that others can reproduce what you've done in the study. You also want to make sure that you've listened and responded accordingly to feedback from your peer reviewers. So, your article gets accepted. What happens next? So there's many platforms that are available where you can see who looks at your work, if your work is downloaded, if your work is cited. It's also important to use social media to highlight your work nowadays. So Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, etc. are good platforms in order to really get the message of your article out. There's also many author feedback programs where people who read your work can ask you questions about how you did a certain thing, why you did a certain thing. So you may have studied a new drug in the clinic, and someone may want to know why you studied it a certain way. So this is an opportunity for people to give feedback to the author. Thank you very much for tuning in to understand how to get your work published as a clinical researcher.